Testing, testing. Hello. Testing.
Okay, is everyone here all right? Okay.
Great. Hello. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Linda Puebla, and I serve as the Program Manager for Community Health Improvement Partners, CHIP, with the San Diego County Suicide Prevention Council. We invited you here today as our partners in suicide prevention to share with you our Report to the Community 2024 and the formal release of our San Diego County Suicide Prevention Action Plan 2024. More importantly, though, we have asked you all here today to help share the message that suicide can be prevented. CHIP is the proud programmatic lead and fiscal agent of the San Diego County Suicide Prevention Council since its inception. Our council has formally been in existence for almost 15 years, but CHIP's work in suicide prevention dates back to the late 90s. The San Diego County Suicide Prevention Council, known as the SPC, is a collaborative, community-wide effort focused on a vision of zero suicides in San Diego County. Our mission is to prevent suicide and its devastating consequences. To find out more about the Suicide Prevention Council and its committees, please visit spcsandiego.org. At this press conference, the SPC is doing something unique today in combining the release of our report to the community that we will refer to as the SPC Community Report 2024 and the release of the SPC Suicide Prevention Action Plan 2024 that we will be referring to now as the SPAP 2024 update. While the SPC Community Report Card 2024 shares important suicide demographic data through cross-sections, sectors of the county, as well as data spanning the past 10 years, the report card emphasizes the value of data, helping our suicide prevention efforts to provide support at the appropriate level to help people find their reason for living. The SPAP 2024 update provides a very timely and anticipated update to our action plan. The last time that the SPC released a suicide prevention action plan update for the County of San Diego was in 2018. Many technological advances and world impacts in the field of public health and suicide prevention made the 2018 report in need of review and updating. These new reports have important information, and we are here today to share more about how you can join our efforts and use these reports in your efforts to help prevent suicide in our community. It is now my pleasure to introduce our Behavioral Health Services Director for the County of San Diego, Dr. Luke Bergman, to share more insights on the status of suicide in our county.
Is this okay if I leave it here? The mic? Well, I'd like everyone to hear what I say. Is that okay? Okay, great. Sure. Thanks so much, Linda. Good morning, everyone. We're here to talk about suicide prevention, discuss the rate of suicide deaths in our region, and help erase the stigma around discussing this important issue. Our goal is to create a community where everyone is aware that they have a role to play in suicide prevention. So today we're announcing an update to the San Diego County Suicide Prevention Action Plan, or SNAP, a plan that can help each of us save a life. Suicide prevention efforts are most successful when done collectively. This new SNAP report is a guide to help our entire region, both individuals and organizations, develop strategies and take actions to prevent suicide. Based on recent data, it builds upon more than a decade of planning, implementation, and evaluation of efforts and activities. Now for a look at some of the data. Overarchingly, we see a few important things with this most recent report. First, there's been a significant decrease in annual suicide deaths in San Diego County over the last 5 years for which we have data. In 2023, there were 363 suicide deaths among San Diego County residents. This represents an overall 12% decrease compared to 5 years prior in 2019, when 460 people died in our county as a result of suicide. And we should celebrate this reduction as good news. The various things we are doing to address suicide risk in our communities are clearly working. And it's promising that we see these overall reductions across demographics and across geographies in our county. Compared to annual data from 2019, we've seen reductions among males and females. We've seen reductions among all racial and ethnic groups. And though we've seen a slight increase in the rate of suicide deaths among our oldest community members, we've seen reductions among all other age cohorts, including young people between the ages of 10 and 24, who are, it's fair to estimate, perhaps our population of greatest concern, as the CDC calculates that between 2018 and 2022, 20% of overall deaths among youth nationwide are attributable to suicide. But we need to be thoughtful about these data in order to continue making progress. Most obviously, while we see a longer arc reduction, the last 2 years for which we have data have left us with news that isn't as good. Overall, between 2021 and 2023, there's been a 6% increase in suicide deaths. And we see emerging vulnerability among certain populations. From 2021 to 2023, suicide rates increased, for example, 51% for non-Hispanic Black residents. And during the same period, there was a 56% increase in the suicide rate among those 10 to 24. These are harrowing mortality numbers. This report is especially meaningful and useful, though, because it looks beyond mortality data at numbers of cases presenting to EDs or other crisis services with suicide attempt and ideation. These data make clear that females and youth are particularly vulnerable, as we've seen increases in suicide attempt and ideation in those two cohorts, not just in the last 2 years, but over the last 5 years, even as rates of death have decreased. We need to focus attention and resources on these community members. At the same time, we can't lose sight of the fact that the group with the highest rate of suicide death in the county is middle-aged or older non-Hispanic white men, particularly those living in East County, which geographically has the highest rate of suicide death in our county. This points to one of the most significant opportunities that we face in reducing suicide numbers, and that's means reduction. Overwhelmingly, males who attempt suicide do so using firearms. And overwhelmingly, relative to other means of suicide attempt, firearms are deadly. We need to keep pressing on safer use and opportunities for safer storage, and we're doing that as part of the Gun Violence Reduction Work Plan, in which behavioral health, in partnership with the Suicide Prevention Council, will be increasing education about means reduction and firearm safety as a method to prevent suicide. And behavioral health and the Suicide Prevention Council are doing so much else as well. Beginning this past November, mobile crisis response teams are able to be deployed to school districts across the county. The Helping, Engaging, Reconnecting, and Educating, or Here Now program, has reached over 3,800 students, providing assessments for suicide risk and interventions based on risk. The Behavioral Health Services Epidemiology team has developed a surveillance suicide risk data report using syndromic data from emergency rooms, allowing near real-time data collection of suicide risk. Behavioral Health Services has increased the number of question, persuade, refer, or QPR gatekeeper trainings to equip more San Diego County residents to recognize the warning signs of suicide and to seek help. Behavioral Health Services has piloted increased screening for suicide and intervention in federally qualified health centers, particularly those located in rural areas of the county. The SPC, facilitated by Community Health Improvement Partners, the It's Up to Us campaign, the San Diego County Access and Crisis Line, and over 80 active SPC members are working collectively to raise awareness about suicide. In 2023, the Suicide Prevention Council hosted 142 suicide prevention trainings, reaching almost 2,000 people. These trainings educated attendees about how best to recognize warning signs, provide resource information, and assist loved ones through open and direct communication. The trainings are currently offered free of charge To find out more, please visit spcsandiego.org to sign up for or host a training. You can learn how to recognize the warning signs, provide information on resources, and empower people to talk openly with loved ones. The most important conversations about suicide are often among family, friends, and social networks. Today, my call to action for everyone listening is to have that conversation, share with them this report, and join our efforts to prevent suicide. Thanks for your time and attention. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Sebastian Slovin, who has personal lived experience and is using his experience to help others who are struggling to find connections in life. Sebastian's the founder of Nature Unplugged, a nonprofit which focuses on promoting mental health in the digital age. He's also a suicide prevention advocate, author, and public speaker on topics of suicide prevention. Sebastian's been a member of the Suicide Prevention Council for the past 8 years and is a trainer in ASSIST, QPR, and our first responder suicide prevention training. Sebastian.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bergman, appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. So as we've heard, the Suicide Prevention Council, facilitated by CHIP, is doing some incredible work to help prevent suicide in San Diego County. And there's still more work to be done. So I'd like to take a few minutes to share a little bit of my personal story of living through and learning from suicide. I always feel like, obviously, the data is really critically important, and if you can combine that with a personal story, it can be even more powerful. So, I was fortunate to grow up here in San Diego in the community of La Jolla. Familiar, very nice place to grow up, and had a pretty ideal upbringing in a lot of ways. Both my parents loved the ocean, loved the beach. I spent a lot of my time at the beach when I was a kid. And my dad in particular, he loved the ocean. A lot of my memories, my early memories, are growing up at the beach with him. And actually, just before this, I was taking a walk down the hall, and there's a beautiful mural of the La Jolla Cove. And that's a lot of my most vivid memories of my dad are at the La Jolla Cove. And even before I could swim, he was this incredible swimmer, one of the best swimmers in the world during his prime, and an incredible ocean swimmer. But he would have me hold on to it like around his neck, and he would swim out like toward the buoys of La Jolla Cove. And I was terrified being little out there in the deep water, but he was incredibly strong, and I always felt safe with him in the water. And I think that's how I still think of him in a lot of ways, as this amazingly powerful, strong person. And that's, I think, how a lot of the outside world saw him. And from the outside looking at him, he had a lot going for him. You know, successful in business, successful in sports, you know, great family, all this stuff. But behind the scenes, or, you know, behind the surface, he was really struggling with his mental health. I think he did an incredible job of not really showing the world any of his vulnerabilities, kind of kept it all together at all times, and did that for a number of years. But unfortunately, that built up, and those internal challenges became overwhelming to him. And when I was quite young, when I was 6 years old, he took his own life. He left my sister and my mom and me in a pretty bad situation in a variety of ways. And, you know, as you can imagine, my childhood really changed dramatically after that. Moved away from La Jolla to be closer to my mom's work. And we were left in a pretty bad financial situation, so my mom worked multiple jobs to provide for my sister and I. So I became then like a caretaker to my sister. Anyway, my whole world got flipped upside down. And I don't think I fully understood what suicide was as a 6-year-old, but one thing was really clear from a very young age, and that was that there was something, sort of hard to describe this, but there was something kind of strange about the way my dad died. Meaning, all of a sudden, no one really talked about my dad after that. And I was very aware of that. You know, even with extended family, if his name came up, the conversation would get changed. So I grew up feeling this sort of shame, this stigma around suicide, even before I knew what it was. And as I got older and could understand what suicide was, I had all these questions about like what happened to my dad. Is the same thing going to happen to me? Is there something wrong with me by association, genetically or whatever? And I sort of did what my dad did. I because it didn't seem like I could talk about it, I sort of kept everything bottled up. And as you can imagine, that didn't really help my own mental health as a teenager, young adult. I struggled with my own thoughts of suicide and feeling like I was kind of destined to follow my father's footsteps. I was, I think, very fortunate to have that early connection with the ocean, with the beach, and in some ways nature became sort of my refuge. So if things got bad day to day, I would just go to the beach and go to the ocean. That was my place to kind of reconnect with my dad, and I think it saved my life in a lot of ways, and that's largely how I got into the work I'm doing today with Nature Unplugged, which is about using nature to promote mental health. I got really into bodyboarding, which is sort of like the less cool version of surfing, if you're familiar with. Surfers often give bodyboarders a hard time, but I became a professional bodyboarder, so that gave me some outlets. And I want to share I had an experience when I was 17 that really also, combined with the nature connection, really, I think, saved my life and changed my trajectory. And that was that through my bodyboarding, I had the opportunity to go to Australia. And my dad took his own life in Australia. We were kind of back and forth between San Diego and Perth, Australia. So I had this opportunity to go to Australia, to go to the place where he died. And to remind you, like, up until this point, I hadn't really talked about my dad much at all, hadn't confronted suicide or his suicide. And I was going and staying with one of my dad's best friends from childhood. And right when I got there, I'm going to keep this tight because it could be a long story, but my dad's best friend, his name was John David. He basically asked me about my dad, confronted me with my dad's suicide right away. And I didn't know this at the time, but John David's father, so my dad's friend's father, his father took his own life when he was a kid as well. And so he started sharing about his experience losing his dad as a kid, and that he didn't talk about it until he was middle-aged, basically. And again, to kind of speed this up, my takeaway from that conversation, what he shared with me was that I could not run away from this. So I could try, but it would be sort of pointless or futile. That, if I wanted to deal with this, I needed to face this head on. And so he encouraged me and supported me to start learning more about my dad, to learn more about suicide and what was going on. And from that moment on, it wasn't like I was healed, but it was the beginning. It planted the seed for me to start to face, I think, what I had been running away from for a long time. I read everything I could about suicide. I learned about my dad. And it's been I think that was the beginning of my sort of recovery and dealing with the grief, which is ongoing. So that leads me to some calls to action of my own, which I think will echo what Dr. Bergman shared. And I think it's that this is sort of obvious, I think, but it's worth restating that suicide and the stigma and the shame, and I think a lot of the stuff with mental health, it really thrives in the shadows. It thrives when it's scary and we don't want to talk about it, but it does really well in those situations. So, I think my call to action is do what you can in whatever way that you can to face this. And that could be having a conversation with a loved one, having a conversation with a friend, checking in on someone you're concerned about, having a conversation with yourself. There's a lot of ways to get going. And I think that the Suicide Prevention Council provides a lot of these resources and a lot of ways to start this journey. So, however much you want to get going with this, the sky's the limit. And I think here are a few just tangible things to consider. Check out the Suicide Prevention Council website. It's spcsandiego.org. It's been mentioned a few times, but really wonderful website with a lot of resources, great resources. Join the Suicide Prevention Council. Another way to kind of step it up. Download the SPAP Update 2024. Host or attend a suicide prevention training. So I've been fortunate to go through a variety of suicide prevention trainings and become a facilitator in a variety of suicide prevention trainings through the SPC, and it's been hugely helpful for me. You can also volunteer with the Suicide Prevention Council. So lots of ways to to get going. And I want to say on a personal note that I have been a member of the Suicide Prevention Council for about 8 years now, and it has been hugely helpful for all the, it's allowed me to increase the amount of resources that I had, access to resources. Again, I've done a ton of trainings with them. I think more importantly, though, the biggest takeaway for me is that it connected me with a community of like-minded individuals and organizations who have the same mission and the same purpose to help prevent suicides and kind of bring this thing out of the shadows. So, check out the Suicide Prevention Council. They're doing amazing work, and I'm just grateful to have been a part of their community for a number of years now. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Linda Puebla to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian, for sharing your story and being vulnerable. And before I close us out, I do want to talk a little bit more about the Suicide Prevention Action Plan Update 2024 and just what that entails. So the 2024 update is more inclusive than our 2018 update, and it now comes in multiple languages. So right now, the update is available in English, Spanish, Chinese, Somali, and to come, we will also be having the update translated into Arabic, Tagalog, Vietnamese, Korean, and Persian. The update also includes sections with the CDC and community-informed risk factors and protective factors for suicide listed by various categories, including priority populations, educational, and healthcare, to name a few. This update also includes new qualitative data on the impact of COVID-19 from a suicide prevention lens. This update also has community recommended strategies and strategic directions based on the 9 strategies from the SPAP 2018 update. And the 2024 update also has just a more robust evaluation framework as well. I'd also like to take a moment to highlight some of the San Diego County Suicide Prevention Council key accomplishments over the last 6 years that stand out in our 2024 update. The SPC continues to act as a key hub for collaboration among local agencies, private organizations, and communities by coordinating and improving suicide prevention activities and services. SPC led a rapid and effective response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The SPC expanded subcommittees to include means reduction and postvention for suicide, and are playing a pivotal role in delivering a wide range of suicide prevention activities and supports. The SPC has helped expand the use of evidence-based screening tools for suicide prevention as well. And our goal here is to create a community where everyone sees that they have a role to play in suicide prevention, whether on a personal level or a professional level, and each of us has the ability to learn the signs of suicide, remind someone of their reason to live, and refer them for professional help. Now, before we conclude this press conference, I'd like to take a moment to thank the County of San Diego leadership for the dedicated and continued support of suicide prevention. Thank you, Dr. Luke Bergman, for your dedication over the years and for your leadership and support. To CHIP staff and all of the SPC members, thank you all for being here and for your unwavering dedication to helping those in our community find their reason for living. On behalf of CHIP, I would also like to take a moment to thank all of the SPC partners that dedicate their time, resources, talents, and knowledge to our SPC and to the creation and implementation of our action plan. Thank you again to all of those in attendance today and those joining us via live stream. Now to the side, you will find posters with QR codes and visuals that will link you to all the reference materials, including the SPC report to the community 2024, the SPAP 2024 update, resources and recommendations for reporting on suicide and suicide prevention. Myself and other speakers from today will stand by for interviews afterwards. Other members of our Suicide Prevention Council are also available virtually and by phone for interviews as well. This formally concludes our press conference. Thank you again for joining us today, and thank you for your support in helping each of us reach a vision of 0 suicides in our county.